Well, hello, friend. Have you ever been in a conflict and thought, what do I do? It just seems like nothing you do makes it better, it makes it worse. If so, please listen to this video because today I'm going to talk with you about some ways to deal with conflict. There's so much conflict in our world today. And I wanted to let you know that I have my dogs with me today, and their name is Brock and Bennett. See them? There we go. And they sometimes get into conflict as well. But one of the most important things that I've learned is something that I call empathize and then explain. Now, when we're in a conflict with someone, or when I'm in a conflict, I often want to lead by talking. I want to lead by explaining, defending, building my case. There's a time for that, but I suggest that you don't lead with talking, but you lead with listening. That's why I call it empathize and then explain. When you empathize with someone, you just take a moment and try to understand reality from their perspective. You're not saying you agree with it. You're simply taking the time, as the saying goes, to walk a mile in their shoes. And then once they feel understood, then you say something like, are you open to hearing my viewpoint on this situation? So a few years ago, I was listening to this former FBI hostage negotiator named Gary Nessner. And Nessner actually did all these negotiations. In fact, he was one of the people that negotiated with David Koresh at Waco. And, I'm thinking to myself, here's this big, tough hostage negotiator. His strategy must be to put people in their place, right? Wrong. As someone said, don't put others in their place. Put yourself in their place. And he talked about the stairways of collaboration. And on this stairway, there are 4 steps. The first step is active listening. Isn't that interesting? So he's in this conflict situation with someone that most likely has a gun or a bomb. His first step is active listening. Are you a good listener? Now, here are some things that I've learned to become a better listener. Number 1, rephrase content. In other words, say something like, if I understand you correctly, you're saying that when I looked at the phone when we were talking, you felt unimportant. Is that accurate? Sorry, I just about tripped over my dogs. We're having a little bit of conflict here. Rephrase content. Next, reflect feeling. In other words, you don't just listen with your ears, you listen with your eyes. They're angry. You name it. You say, you're angry, aren't you? Now, what are some benefits of good listening? Number 1, you make the other person feel loved and important. Did you know that one of the greatest ways that you can show love to someone is just listen to them? Next, you're obeying God. The Bible says, be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. Guys, that's God's communication sequence. Many of us have it reversed. We're quick to get angry. We're quick to talk, but we're slow to listen if we ever really listen at all. Next, diagnose before you prescribe. You need to listen so that you can make a proper diagnosis. If you just jump in right away and start prescribing, how do you know if you've made the right diagnosis? So take the time to diagnose properly. Next, you will distinguish yourself. Do you know why? There are so few people who really know how to listen. It's such a rare skill in our day and age that if you can just learn to listen well, you will distinguish yourself. People will be like, wow. And like I've said, it's one of the greatest ways to deal with conflict. All right. So Gary Nessner is this FBI hostage negotiator, and he talked about his strategy of dealing with conflict. The first step is active listening. So he leads with listening. The next step is empathy. In other words, the Bible says, rejoice with those that rejoice, Mourn with those that mourn. That's empathy. Mourn with those that mourn. Take some time to try to enter into their situation. You know, if I was in your shoes, I'd probably feel the exact same way. You know, it makes sense that you feel that way. So practice empathy. The first step is active listening. The second step is empathy. The third step is trust. He says that as you listen to people and show them empathy, they begin to trust you. And trust is the glue of every relationship. You know, Billy Graham once said something like, when money is lost, something is lost. When health is lost, you've really lost something. But when trust is lost, everything is lost. So the first step is active listening. Lead with listening. Next, show empathy. Third, that builds trust. And then the fourth step is collaboration. In other words, when people trust you, they will begin to collaborate with you or work with you. And again, what stood out to me is here's this big, tough FBI hostage negotiator. And his strategy wasn't to put the other person in their place, but to put himself in their place, to listen, to show empathy, to build trust, and to collaborate. You know, I want to just share with you this poem. When I ask you to listen to me and you start giving me advice, you haven't done what I've asked. When I ask you to listen to me and you begin to tell me why I shouldn't feel the way I do, you're trampling on my feelings. When I ask you to listen to me and you feel you have to do something to solve my problems, you failed me, strange as it may seem. Listen, all I ask is that you listen, not talk or do. Just hear me. So please listen and just hear me. And if you want to talk, wait a minute, and I will listen to you. Guys, as someone said, when you're in conflict, don't try to put the other person in their place. Try to put yourself in their place. Empathize and then explain. Thank you for joining me today. May you enjoy God today.